Excited for this.
Same here. So it was 2 years ago. She will pop in on occasion. She actually just timed this perfectly. She's on her break from work right now. So
I love it.
So if you're ever home visiting your parents and you want some authentic Sicilian food,
there we go.
the door is open.
Oh, amazing. I'm gonna have to take you up on that.
Yeah, my wife is 100% Sicilian. My grandparent, or her parents actually came over from this little island off the coast of Sicily.
Oh my goodness, we might be
Lorenzo.
related. We could very easily be related. We found out we were Sicilian as well.
Really? Oh, here we go.
All right, family connection.
Yes, he's my cousin.
Okay.
Are we all? Yes.
So I didn't mention this 2 years ago when we spoke the last time, when your first Netflix series was just dropping, actually, and loved it. Asked you at the time, was there another one in the works? You kind of look a little coy about that, which I understand. Now you've got the new show, which we'll talk about, but my dad actually just passed away. And what was interesting was I talked with friends and family about talking with you, and the question that came up was, well, what happens in the course of the telephone conversation if he starts to feel something and tells you he wants to share something with you? And I'm like, I don't know what I would say, because it was so fresh at that point.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. So 2 years removed, if at any point during this conversation, if my dad happens to come through to you, please, by all means.
We'll do. If anything pops in, I'll let you know from me.
Speaking of which, though, when I talked with listeners of ours on My 97.5, the station in Visalia, obviously a lot of questions came through. I weeded through some of them. But if it's okay, I just want to ask Rochelle in Springville. I'm skeptical of the whole thing. I want to believe, but parts of me just don't. I'm assuming you get that a lot.
Totally. I think that it's important to have conversations around belief, what we do believe, what we don't believe. I don't really hold too much weight in belief just generally, but I think that there's something to be said about transformative value of experience. I will say that much. And I will say that the first-hand experience someone has when they hear a validation that they know could only come from a loved one that's passed, it has a very noetic effect. It sends a person down a whole journey for the rest of their lives of trying to kind of understand and place that experience. So I think doubt's important. I think it's how we learn new things. I think it's how we ask questions and get answers. But the realm of mediums is very subjective. It doesn't really work in the quantifiable. It's more qualitative.
Although I will say, having watched the special and the series, actually, Life After Death, and I mentioned this at the time, when you had that feeling about something about a fire in Hanford at China Alley, and I believe it was the next day there actually was a fire. I mean, granted, it was well after that happened. It could have been one of those post-editing tricks, but if you believe the timing on it, that seemed pretty substantial to me for someone who kind of questions as well. Not calling myself a true skeptic, but how are they doing there, your friends? Because that's how you got started, was doing readings there in China Alley in Hanford.
That's right. China Alley is where it really all started for me. And to be able to go there and film the show was so surreal and cathartic as it was. And then to see it kind of catch on fire within hours was even more intense. But I was able to go back. We've made some efforts to try to encourage recovery and donation efforts there. And they're chugging along. They're so resilient. They've been through a lot already, even leading up to that. So I would say, when it comes to that experience, that really demonstrates the power of meaningful coincidence. And that's what I've learned is a big common thread from them on the other side, regardless of what you believe or don't. There is something to be said about those instances in which events seem to line up in an uncanny way. And I think most of us can look back at our lives and think, oh, that was kind of strange. And then we either, shrug our shoulders and move on, or we give it more thought. And for those who give it more thought, that's who I'm here for.
And to be in touch with that and in tune with that, as we kind of spoke before, just those feelings and being able to develop that. Have you talked with those, or do people come up to you and say they also have a feeling? And what do you tell them as far, not that you want to create any competition in the marketplace, but what do you tell them as far as if they have a feeling Do you tell them to go for it? Do you tell them to, what do you tell them?
Well, I think we all have an intuition. If you look at intuition, it means inner tuition or inner knowledge. And that's not something that's exclusive to people who do psychic readings. I think that my particular modality might be a little bit more developed in one very specific context, but that's just due to practice. I think anybody can tap into certain aspects of innate knowingness around their own lives. I think we quite often get those feelings when we shake someone's hand and we get a first impression, or when you walk into a room and you can kind of get a sense of whether you're welcomed or not. I think we often, as I said earlier, shrug off those moments and just kind of lean on them, not realizing that they are intuition and that when developed, they can actually serve a great value in our lives. So I'm very encouraging. I don't encourage people to actively go out and do readings unless they feel genuinely called to do that. That's not just an occupation you pick as much as I think it kind of picks you.
My wife, actually, who may pop in again at any moment, she's still in here. She comes.
Yes.
So she has these, do you call them feelings? Or
Yeah.
so we will be driving down the road, literally, and she will tell me there's someone wearing overalls in that abandoned building over there. And I'll ask her, do you see them? Or she's like, no, it's not seeing, it's more just a feeling. Is that kind of as it is with you when you actually feel a true presence of someone?
Sure. Clairvoyance manifests in many different forms, and sometimes it is a very strong mental imagery. Other times it'll feel akin to doing a math problem without pen and paper. So if you know
Okay.
what it feels like, right? It's kind of a pseudo visual process internally, and very kind of hard to put words to. It's very ineffable. But very often will come through as mental flashes. One quality that does seem to be true across the board is that these clairvoyant moments, when they do happen to people, are usually very fast. They usually don't last for very long. And so they're usually attributed to being like flashes or moments of being struck by an epiphany.
Okay. Going back to some of the listeners of ours who had some questions, and I think you actually answered this when we spoke before. At what age did you realize you had this talent? And I remember at the time you corrected me as well, saying that it's more of an ability as you see it. At what age did that happen? And at what point did you truly start embracing it and say, this is actually something I really need to do some more with?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the phrasing, I think ability just is more accurate because calling yourself gifted is kind of annoying. So I much prefer an ability, a proclivity, a knack, but it's something that was developed over time. And at 10 years old, I had my first premonition, that first kind of inkling or inclination of something different. And then it just kind of continued over the years as I developed as a person. I think the ability kind of developed alongside me. And then once I reached, my teen years, I started having these moments of knowingness around students and teachers. And that's really when that started changing, when I started getting that confirmation from other people of the very specific things that I would say that would make sense. And then they would, validate. And then I recognized that as something that could be done repeatedly.
There's a couple others, and these are both very specific. So I'll just kind of mention them and take them for what they are.
Yeah.
Those who are fans of yours, obviously, Sherry and Alpa mentioned my mom passed away a few years ago, and I still can't get over it. I think about her every day and miss her so much. How is she doing on the other side? So I'll just mention that. And again, if something comes across you, great. And then this one I got a couple days ago, and this one kind of touched me. I didn't ask for any follow up on it. Jennifer in Exeter. She said, I need to know if my brother ran the stop sign on purpose.
Oh.
And a couple of reasons I wanted to include some personal ones is I would imagine occupational hazard, you get people coming up to you all the time. Maybe in times you're not, quote unquote, in the mood for a reading of that magnitude, but yet something still comes over you and someone does come through. Do you always try to accommodate someone in that situation, or how do you handle situations like that when you're not on the clock, as it were?
Sure. Well, I think being that it is a real ability, it really does come from something outside of myself. So I can't quite turn it on exactly. I
Yeah.
can't dial direct. As much as I get feelings, and when I get them, they tend to align with meaningful timing. But I think that those questions so succinctly embody what so many people feel if they could just get the answer to one question. And very often, no matter what the circumstances are of what leads to someone's passing, everyone wants to know, are they okay? And I think that that's a conversation everybody wants to know, myself included. And I think is the real essence of why I do what I do. I don't claim to have all the answers. I don't even claim to have 10% of them. But what I do know is that if our loved ones can come through and validate things that are specific, that are only known to us, that reflect some interpersonal dynamic, then there's something to be gleaned from that is of value, but indicates also that they have to be okay, that they obviously are in a place where they've reached a degree of self-awareness and evolution. And that gives me a lot of comfort, even if I don't know the logistics of what necessarily gets us there.
I know I mentioned before, we love, my wife and I, actually our family, Life After Death, when that first dropped on Netflix back in 2022, February, I believe. The framework of it, I thought, was phenomenal, where there was almost always a reading or two that takes place, but then it got into the Tyler Henry we didn't get a chance to see when you were on years ago, and the readings that you do, some of your personal life. With the new show, The Live from the Other Side, debuting September 17th, we'll be watching that as well. How is this going to differ from that? And in what ways is it going to be the same?
Absolutely. Well, as always, the focus is going to be on readings, but I love being able to kind of mix up the format and really up the ante. On some level, I think the live component of this is raw in a way that we've never been able to show before. We've never had the technology to be able to really demonstrate the process live and unedited. And I think that as years go on, the bar for convincing mediumship keeps rising. In the 1800s, getting a name might have been impressive. Nowadays, you can Google someone. And so I don't rely on that information to really substantiate a reading. You have to be able to get those inside jokes, those family dynamics, those last words. And that's really what substantiates a reading, while other things kind of act as a roadmap or like landmarks that help me kind of paint a picture.
So, in reading some of the description on the show itself, it sounds like there's going to be quite a bit of. In fact, here I have one of your quotes, and you can tell me this is an actual quote or not.
Yes.
I know the skepticism that comes with mediums, and this project will let me lean into that and be honest in an unedited way, demonstrating high stakes readings in real time. My goal is for this live format to open some minds and change some lives. I'm assuming there will be celebrities that will be read with this.
So it will be a mix, and that's actually one of my favorite parts. In some ways, it is a hybrid of kind of what people saw with Hollywood Medium, but moreover, that aspect of life after death that I like so much, which was helping folks with a genuine need who were a lot like the people I grew up with. That also gets accommodated to the show as well. So one of the really interesting safeguards of this is that while there will be some recognizable faces, they are going to bring along people, almost gifting readings to worthy people that they know who are not public figures, and none of us will know who they are that they're going to bring. And so it will create a kind of semi-controlled environment where anything could happen. They could bring a hardcore skeptic, nobody knows. And we just kind of see it play out on the live stage. And so there is a degree of course, nerves that comes with that. But on some level, it's a testament to trust that there is something to be said about genuine faith in one's ability to just put one foot in front of the other.
So, with there being celebrities involved, with bringing some friends and family as well, are you able to drop any names to us, or are we be keeping that secret for the time being?
For the time being, it's secret, but only because I actually don't know who's going to be in the live component of it. So
Got
that celebrity component that will be live, they're not. I have no knowledge of that because it hasn't happened yet. But I have done one pre-recorded celebrity reading with.
How nerve-wracking is this going to be? And you've done readings that aren't live like this for the entire audience for Netflix. Because as you mentioned, you can't just turn it off and turn it on. What if someone brings like 2 or 3 people there with them? They're hoping for someone's aunt who just passed to come through, but it's someone else who's there with them that isn't necessarily into having the reading, but that's the voice that seems to be the most prominent one.
Yes, that very often can be or end up becoming the most validating reading. I remember I read Tori Spelling on Hollywood Medium, and her dad, who she so succinctly wanted to connect with, did not come through. But Tori brought a friend along who in the back was watching, and his partner had passed. And that person came through loud and clear and acknowledged the tragedy of their loss and gave a really meaningful message. Meanwhile, didn't hear from dad at all. So there's this kind of joke I say of, people come sometimes wanting to hear from their mom and then they end up hearing from their mother-in-law. And I just have like what I get. But generally, if I have enough people in front of me, I'll get pulled to something of substance if I start scribbling and kind of turning on.
I remember after the Netflix series, the original one, The Life After Death, you and I meant to get to see you. I think you were at Tachi Palace Hotel and Casino or Eagle Mountain Casino, one of the two, and I was not able to get there. How are those readings when you're in front of an audience of 1,000, 2,000, whatever the audience happens to be? How are those different from these when you're going to be with a handful of people and you don't know who's going to come through?
Yeah, there's always that element, ironically, of unpredictability, which for my occupation might seem a little counterintuitive. Oh, geez. But I find that when it comes to the live shows, I do them across the country. I'm so thankful to be able to have a tour and get to kind of work with large scale energy. And that is so overwhelming and just as invigorating as it is draining. I think what I like about this format is that while it will be on a set, there will be kind of a homey component of it. I won't be in front of thousands of people or even hundreds of people. I'll be in front of a few people. And that'll kind of allow me to just tune in, more akin to some of my early readings on the Today Show, which for me was great practice, very early on, being a 18-year-old and going to New York for the first time.
You mentioned with those bigger readings that you do with a live audience at the casinos or wherever you go to, that it's draining because you have to be so in tune with every aspect of what you're hearing, what you're feeling, little pressures in your chest, whether your face happens to get warm or not, and being able to translate that into a name and a face and maybe a song or something that is talking to a member of the audience. Is it literally, because again, having not seen any of those live shows, do you just start explaining what you're healing and feeling and then hope that it connects with someone in the audience and then you can have more of a one-on-one conversation?
Well, generally, I'll get either pulled directly to one person or I'll get kind of a description from the other side of what I'm getting if that's more specific. And then I'll kind of let people raise their hand. And sometimes I'm surprised how many people have very similar situations down to a whole string of details. And so you have to kind of figure out who you're with in the audience. And then once that's established, and once I'm pretty confident that I'm with the right person, they come up to the microphone, we have a dialogue, and I then have to be able to connect to information that's generally nuanced. So very often we will have family dynamics come through, akin to so-and-so doesn't speak to so-and-so, and that's okay because of so-and-so. It doesn't turn into the Jerry Springer show at live shows. When sensitive things come through, I whisper it in their ear, and we have that shared experience. And I'm very big on protecting people, but it's very much really the details, the nuance of what comes in.
When it comes down to a dynamic, as you're starting to explain something and say there's like 5 or 6 people that are still thinking maybe it's someone that they know, do you sometimes get, no, it's not that one, no, it's not, no, I'm talking to that person in the red top, that's the person I'm here to talk to?
All the time. And if that didn't
Okay.
happen, I'd be in a lot of trouble. Because it comes through strong enough where usually I'm like, okay, I know I'm with you and I'm not with you. And I always say, if I don't know exactly who I'm going to, at the very least, I usually know who I'm not going to. So
um, with this, the new show, The Live from the Other Side, what, and maybe this has happened previously, what if you start feeling something for the boom mic operator
oh yeah.
or camera operator, someone who's there in the background just helping you and the show look good and sound good? Do you try to reset or do you bring that person on camera and say, hey, listen, I'm getting something specifically for you, this is why we're here, so let's roll with it?
Yes, it happened actually in Life After Death, despite not being shown in Louisiana when we were filming on a motorized boat in the bayou of a random swamp. I got a very strong feeling from the grandfather of the sound guy and proceeded to give him an entire reading in the middle of a swamp. It was kind of like Little Mermaid. It was very like it. Just he and I were just kind of floating along. And I was bringing through his grandfather, and it was just very surreal. And this was somebody who I had worked with, so we'd had kind of a professional relationship. But then suddenly, he's crying, and I don't know why he's crying as much as I know that what I'm saying is meaningful enough to evoke a reaction. And so that very much changes your dynamics with people once you've had that.
I seem to recall in Life After Death, there was an incident with someone that you did some volunteer work,
Yes.
and you were talking with them in the parking lot. And you even said, listen, I don't normally do this, but I'm feeling very compelled to talk with you about something because in talking with you before, you mentioned because you don't know where people are in their place in life at that point, if they're ready for it, but something really told you, hey, if you don't want to hear it, I won't say it, but I'm getting something for you.
Yeah, I find that there is a time and a place to do readings, but when I get the feeling and I'm in a comfortable setting with somebody that's open, I share that willingness at least and give them the opportunity. But you never want to make it worse for people, and I always want to leave people better than I find them. And I hope that if even a person doesn't receive a reading in watching these readings, being it through the show, or in person, that it can help kind of get the gears going, regardless of belief, really getting us to do some soul searching in here about what it means to be alive, what it means to love. And I know that took a little bit of a turn on the big picture there, but that really is what it's all about.
So with Live from the Other Side, again on Netflix starting September 17th, did you come up with the concept with this? Did Netflix say, hey, listen, the series with us was so successful, this is the direction we want to go with it? How did this happen from the end of Life After Death to now this new live series that Netflix is now getting into?
Sure. It's always been a very lucky for me, a very natural synergy at every point in my life. I got Hollywood Medium when I was around 18, 19, when I was organically just meeting celebrities and reading them. And then this show, kind of came at a time where no medium before has ever done a live show like this. And there's a reason. It's so nerve-wracking. No safety net. If you fall, you look wrong. And so to have a willingness to do that, I think is at a time in my life where I'm ready for that to be able to show kind of without a safety net in a larger way. So they just kind of organically came together.
Are there any more plans in the works? Because again, I'm assuming this is going to be just as successful, if not more successful, because of the live aspect of it. Now that Netflix is doing more things, some people have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan. What do you see you doing years from now with this ability?
I really just kind of take it one day at a time. Ironically, I'm not somebody who focuses too much on the future, which is strange considering
Yeah.
how much is focused on the future. But yeah, even to a greater extent, I'm not somebody who gets readings or really even focuses on what I want my future to be, as much as I really try to act in the moment. Strike while the iron is hot. If I
Uh-huh.
see somebody that needs help, try to do what I can to meet that or meet people where they're at, but without really much forecasting as far as where I want to go in the big picture. Life has always found a way to kind of coincidentally lead me to where I feel I was meant to go. And I think a lot of successful people, when they look back at their lives, can see the destiny that contributed to it and those moments that were pivotal in hindsight, but we don't realize in the moment.
It's been a long time since I've seen Life After Death. I seem to recall, though, there were a couple episodes towards the end where it was getting into some things that you were trying to get some answers to personally. Without getting too personal, were those some things that you did get some resolution on? And if anyone wants to know, here's my little teaser for it. Go watch Life After Death on Netflix.
Really got the biggest genealogy mystery in recent memory, but it was pretty wild. That we did get a little bit of closure on. We did learn to really redefine closure. That closure didn't even mean really getting an answer to my mother's genealogy, as that was a huge mystery and a big, problem. But we learned to find peace with the situation. My mom's gotten very close with her living family, and we've been able to kind of redefine what that means. But like with any trauma, it does have intergenerational effects, and I think we'll be picking up the pieces for the rest of our lives. But aren't we all?
I think maybe because we are, as close as we are to Hanford, stomping grounds. One of the aspects of the Life After Death series that my wife and I loved, and then those that listened to me on my 97.5 also commented that they loved, is the things learning about you behind the scenes. Will this new series, The Live from the Other Side, touch any of that, or is this going to be much more professional Tyler Henry?
No, this will be more reading oriented, but I think that there will be something that will be pulling back the curtain on a personal level because it will demonstrate not only when I'm nailing it, but when I'm struggling and then the payoff of the struggle. And I
Okay.
think it'll give people an appreciation for how exactly it happens in my mind and then how it's received and sometimes in the moment not received. And that's one of the interesting things too. Stuff comes through, people draw a blank, and then it hits them 5, 10, sometimes 30 minutes later, or sometimes it takes days. But all of that will be kind of captured in a way that's never been done before. And it's going to be fun.
It's a show that I've been waiting for a while. You mentioned when we talked before that you weren't able to say if there was anything in the works yet. I don't know if maybe there were some other things, and it kind of culminated in this. I am so glad that you're going to be back on Netflix doing this again. Are there plans after this to do some more live shows and then come to the South Valley with some of those?
Absolutely. We're definitely going to be doing as many live shows as we can, me and the voices, going across the country. I love touring, I love traveling, and I love being able to come back to the Valley and be able to not only see familiar faces, but get to do readings and get to come back home. I mean, I miss it. So I really look forward to being able to continue that in whatever incarnation it's born into and however it finds life.
Tyler, thank you so much for the extended time. I actually mentioned on the air this morning, this was a little nerve-wracking going into this because we've all done Zoom since the pandemic, but this you will now go down as my very first ever one-on-one Zoom conversation. So
I'm honored. And can I just tell you, look,
yeah,
this may not mean anything, and just good to keep in mind there's like 2 or 3 things.
sure.
As we were talking, I heard in my head a funny reference of Shirley, don't call me Shirley. And it came in as like a funny haha thing of like, oh yeah, Shirley. But it was a play on words. And then there was also an acknowledgement when we talk about dad, if there was anything systemic or affected basically like the entire system, I feel like I am up a creek, not literally, but like with my health and how I feel like everything's shutting down kind of at once. And I don't know why. There's that aspect that pops in. And then just good to keep in mind, I feel peace. I feel all good. If there was not being able to be conscious right before I pass, I need you to know that I felt like I was okay for me to go. I felt like it was okay. I didn't need to hold on. But I feel like he timed his passing, and you need to know that would have been when the timing happened. There's a sense of holding on, holding on, holding on. And then I go. And that happened kind of in the succession of events as it was supposed to. But there is an aspect that comes through and just good to consider. There might end up being something around wineries that ends up being sentimental or significant with him. So if he gets honored, around grapevines or something, just remember that I'm saying that. It all just kind of comes through.
All right, so now I'll tell you, my mom's name is Shirley.
Oh, amazing. Cool.
They She still lives. They lived in Paso Robles, which is the second biggest wine capital in California, as you know. They subscribed at one point to, I think, every winery there. The last time we all did something together was to celebrate my mom's birthday at a winery called Sculptura. And
And then the year after his passing, we went to one of the wineries.
Yeah,
that they were.
We kind of did a celebration of life with my mom and my nephew. And he mentioned he really wasn't able to communicate at one point. He contracted West Nile.
What? Like mosquito?
Yeah. We don't know if he was bit by a mosquito here or in Paso Robles. It was one or the other, obviously, because he was one of those two places. He was taken to the hospital in Templeton and checked him in. He was fine. When we went to go see him, when I went to see him for the first time, because I drove from here to Templeton with my mom, we got there in the morning and his eyes were open, but he was gone, basically. and he was transferred to UCSF in San Francisco, where he was diagnosed with West Nile, because in Templeton they just didn't know what was going on. And at no point did he definitively give any sign that he was hearing us, that he was seeing us, that he knew we were there. His eyes would open. He would move every once in a while. And then eventually he passed. And I was always wondering, and maybe you know, maybe you don't, but, and I was torn either way. Is his spirit still here in that body? Is he aware of everything going on and scared to death because he hasn't passed yet, but he's still here? Or is he gone and it is just a shell of him that's left?
I really feel a genuine sense of peace. And I would tell you otherwise if I felt like, oh, hey, maybe there's stuff still getting worked out or whatever. But I really feel a sense of not only the immensity of who he was, but who he continues to be. And there's a sharpness there. And it's very interesting when this comes through, when we talk about the idea of like pride that fathers have for their sons. There's this feeling of wishing he could have told you that a million times over. For what you do. And it's just very sweet in the way this comes across of genuinely feeling so much more than I even fully got the chance to be when I was here. And that comes in and really lives on through you. There are, just lastly, an acknowledgement around 2 contemporaries. Do you have any siblings?
My sister, who lives in Boston.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Do you know where within family would there be 3 siblings at all?
He was one of 3 siblings.
Yes. I had 2 aunts. Yeah.
Gotcha. Just check and see when you go back there. Sorry, I know this turned into a little reading. I just want to make sure I got that. Yeah, there's an interesting thing about paranormal bringing people together. Yeah. You know? It's weird. Kind of went. Look and check and see on his side of family. This is gonna sound so strange. Check and see on his side of family if there was anybody who would have sustained like a leg injury that would have changed the way that they would have walked. So think of like a weird limp, or if someone had a deformity on one leg or some injury that would have like made us hobble almost.
Okay.
Saying that it's so left field, but it's somebody that's there on that side. Remember the winery thing? That comes in as like in many facets though, like a place honored, remembered, and having a good time and legacy. And then around mom, who would still be here, correct?
Yes.
Remember that when we talk about, for some reason, like vascular system, when we talk about like clotting, veins, there might be conversations around like having either really thin veins or having difficulty getting a vein if she were to like go to a doctor and like, get blood work. So just vascular stuff comes up, and that sometimes we want to minimize likelihoods of strokes, that kind of thing, like keep that all good. I'm not worried by any means. It just comes through as like vascular related and good to keep in mind.
Okay. I got homework now. I love it.
We got homework. Please know, okay, it comes in, and I'm so thankful for you both.
Thank you, Tyler. And we'll be watching on the 17th.
Amazing. I'll see you guys there and we'll talk again. I know it.
And don't forget, have a
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
I would be honored. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Bye.